If I may make a question.
Please.
There is a fact which is inherent to all democratic choices, all voting choices, which is the fact that those who are not yet born and those who do not have the age to vote are always underrepresented in any voting system. And you see the consequences of that mostly in pay-as-you-go system, in which sometimes one generation demands too much from the future generations, and it's funny that sometimes these future generations, which are the younger, they don't support ideas to correct this type of thing, mostly in social security. So that demands altruism and benevolence from one generation towards the younger ones. And this is the first question. And the second question is, I remember that Bertrand Russell, he wrote just after the just after the Second War was finished. He was not an admirer of the United States, but he wrote an essay defending the idea that the United States should be the monopolist of all weapons of mass destruction at that point in time, and that the United States should do that quickly, because otherwise other people would produce that, and there was only one point in time that could happen. Well, this guy was not any American found, so why did he say that? I think that he was somehow worried that the solution by the institution of communities or clubs who would try to enforce security at an international level would catch people in the middle of atomic attacks and so on, so that the externalities generated by this club could be worse than the monopoly, which was, of course, not something to be very clear about if that would be a good idea. Take the United States right now, that you may have an idea of that. And the same thing happens here in Rio de Janeiro when you see the militias, which is exactly the emergence of some groups which are not exactly coerced by ideas, but by the power of force, which by acquiring weapons and so on. And so this leads us to the idea that the endogenous generation of clubs in some areas, and I'm citing specifically public security, international or local, may be problematic. So how do you...
So these are both excellent questions. The first question, I would say, you're absolutely right. If you think about quadratic finance, it gives a lot more financing to things that benefit lots of people. But if some of those people are like just stuck in there as zeros simply because they can't express themselves now, that's a major problem. I don't know the exact right solution, but my intuition is that there's some sort of a mechanism that's kind of like saving, where if people contribute today to a mechanism, and then people later contribute, and that would have led to extra matching funds from before, you just give a ton of matching funds later. So when you contribute to something that has this sort of saved history, then you give more, and then people anticipating that are effectively going to, like, that'll give strength to the organization. It can kind of borrow against those future values. So I'm not sure about it, but I think that would be very interesting to try to figure out. The second idea, I think, fundamentally comes from the fact that existing group formation is subject to free rider problems, which leads to excess fragmentation and therefore potentially conflict in the way that you're describing. My hope is that this sort of group formation, because it gets beyond the private property idea, is not subject to that problem and therefore would lead to efficiently large organizations and therefore some sort of probably global authority on nuclear weapons. So I don't know, but that's the thought.